Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with Part 8, Chinese and Japanese Mysteries, Book 1, Ancient Mysteries from Secret Societies of All Ages, Volume 1 by Charles William Heckethorn. 7. Chinese and Japanese Mysteries. 77. Chinese Metaphysics. In Chinese cosmogony, we discover traces of the once universally prevailing knowledge of the properties of eternal nature. Matter, the first material principle, is assumed to act upon itself and thus to evolve the dual powers. This first material principle is called Tai Kik and described as the first link in the chain of causes. It is the utmost limit in the midst of illimitableness, though in the midst of nonentity there always existed an infinite Li, or principle of order. The Li is called infinite because it is impossible to represent it by any figure, since it is the eternal nothing. This undoubted fragmentary tradition of the most ancient metaphysical system in the world has been ridiculed by many modern writers. But any reader will see that, however imperfectly expressed, it is the theosophic doctrine. It appears very strikingly in the great veneration in which the Chinese hold the number 7, which is the number of death, of destruction, as the material end and the celestial beginning. 78. Introduction of Chinese Mysteries. The Chinese practiced Buddhism in its most simple form and worshipped an invisible God until a few centuries before the Christian era. From the teaching of Confucius, who lived 5 centuries before that era, it appears that in his time there were no mysteries. They only became necessary when the Chinese became an idolatrous nation. The chief end of initiation then was an absorption into the deity Omito Fo. Omito was derived from the Sanskrit Amida, immeasurable, and Fo was only another name for Buddha. The letter Y represented the triune God and was indeed the ineffable name of the deity, the Tetractys of Pythagoras, and the Tetragrammaton of the Jews. The rainbow was a celebrated symbol in the mysteries, for it typified the reappearance of the sun, and this not only in China, but even in Mexico. 79. Parallel between Buddhism and Christianity. The general resemblance between Buddhism and Romanism is so marked that it is acknowledged by the Romanists themselves, who account for this fact by the supposition that Satan counterfeited the true religion. This correspondence holds in minute particulars. Buddha descended, as the legend says, from heaven to be born as a man, the avowed purpose of his mission being to give peace and rest to all flesh, to remove all sorrow and grief from the world, and to preach the truth. At the time of his birth, a bright light shone through the universe, and the Devas who announced his entrance into the world saluted his mother with the words, "All joy be to you, Queen Maya. Rejoice and be glad, for the child you have borne is holy." We have seen in 11 that Maya is a virgin. The worship also of Simon in the temple finds its reflection in the adoration paid by the venerable Axite to the infant Buddha. Further, the Buddhist and the Christian Roman Catholic Church have a supreme and infallible head. We find in both the celibacy of the priesthood, monasteries and nunneries, prayers in an unknown tongue, prayers to saints and intercessors, and especially and principally to a virgin with a child. Also prayers for the dead, repetition of prayers with the use of a rosary, works of merit and supererogation, self-imposed austerities and bodily inflictions, a formal daily service consisting of chants, burning of candles, sprinkling of holy water, bowings, prostrations, fast days and feast days, religious processions, images and pictures and fabulous legends, the worship of relics, the sacrament of confession, purgatory, etc. In some respects, their rites resemble those of the Jews. They propitiate the supreme deity with the blood of bulls and goats, and also offered holocausts. The resemblance is easily accounted for. Romanism and some other creeds are only modernized Buddhism, and many religions are but superstitious perversions of the knowledge of natural phenomena. The tradition about Prester John has its origin in this resemblance between Buddhism and a corrupted Christianity. In the 12th century, there was in China a great Mongol tribe professing Buddhism, which by travelers was mistaken for an Oriental Christian religion. The Nestorian Christians, dwelling among the Mongols, called its head John the Priest. And hence arose the tradition that in the heart of Asia there was a Christian church whose popes bore the title of Prester John. 80. Lao Tzu. Confucius was the religious lawgiver of China, but Lao Tzu was its philosopher. He excelled the former in depth and independence of thought. The word lao or lei is difficult to render. The Chinese itself defines it as a thing indefinite, impalpable, and yet therein are forms. Lao Tzu himself seems to make it equivalent to intelligence. His philosophy is peaceful and loving, and in this respect presents various commendable points of resemblance to Christian doctrine. 81. Japanese mysteries. The Japanese held that the world was enclosed in an egg before the creation, which egg was broken by a bull, the ever-recurring astronomical allegory, alluding to the bull of the zodiac, which in former times opened the seasons, the vernal equinox. It is the same bull, Apis, which Egypt adored, and which the Jews in the wilderness worshipped as the golden calf. Also the bull which, sacrificed in the mysteries of Mithras, poured out its blood to fertilize the earth. The Japanese worshipped a deity who was styled the son of the unknown god, considered the creator of sun and moon, and called Tensio Daisin. The aspirants for initiation were conducted through artificial spheres formed of movable circles representing the revolutions of the planets. The mirror was a significant emblem of the all-seeing eye of their chief deity. In the closing ceremony of preparation, the candidate was enclosed in the pastos, the door of which was said to be guarded by a terrible divinity, armed with a drawn sword. During the course of his probation, the aspirant sometimes acquired so high a degree of enthusiasm as to refuse to quit his confinement in the pastos, and to remain there until he literally perished of famine. To this voluntary martyrdom was attached a promise of never-ending happiness hereafter. Their creed indeed is Buddhism slightly modified. Diabolo ecclesiam Christi imitante, exclaimed Xavier on seeing how the practices of the Japanese resembled those of the Romanists in Europe. And as has been observed of Buddhism in China and Tibet, all the practices of the Japanese ritual are so tinged with the color of Romanism that they might well justify the exclamation of Xavier, who was neither a savant nor a philosopher. 82. Japanese doctrines. The god Tensio Daisin has 12 apostles, and the sun, the planetary hero, fights with monsters and the elements. The ministers of the Temple of the Sun wear tunics of the color of fire and annually celebrate 4 festivals: the 3rd day of the 3rd month, the 5th day of the 5th, the 7th day of the 7th, and the 9th day of the 9th month respectively. And at one of these festivals they represent a myth similar to that of Adonis, and nature is personified by a priest dressed in many colors. The members of this society are called jamabos, and the initiated are enjoined a long time to abstain from meat and to prepare themselves by many purifications. 83. The Lama, the Grand Lama, the god of Tibet, becomes incarnate in man. Thus much the priests reveal to the people. But the true religion, which consists of the doctrine of the supposed origin of the world, is only made known in the almost inaccessible mysteries. The man in whom the Grand Lama has for the time become incarnate, and who is the pontiff, is held in such veneration that the people eat pastilles, accounted sacred, and made from the unclean remains of the food which had contributed to the sustenance of his body. This disgusting practice, however, with them is simply the result of their belief in the metempsychosis parallel with the Indian doctrine of corruption and reproduction, symbolized by the use of cow dung in the purification of the aspirant. And its real meaning is to show that all the parts of the universe are incessantly absorbed and pass into the substance of one another. It is upon the model of the serpent who devours his tail. The dignity of the Lama dates from the 13th century. In the 14th, a portion of the clergy seceded and formed a rival sect. The two religious bodies are distinguished and known by the titles of the bed tassels and the yellow caps from their headgear. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.